Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. Canadians have had enough of Trudeau and his government, but what does that mean?
We get into that tonight and more. So a petition was started, sponsored by Peterborough MP Michelle Ferreri, one of our favorites in the Conservative Party. And it's petition E-4701. And what this petition does is as follows. It states that we, the citizens of Canada, have lost confidence in Justin Trudeau and the Liberal NDP coalition. We call on the House for a vote of no confidence. We ask for an election 45 days after the vote if won. The current government elected is not acting in the best interests of all Canadians. The policies of this government aren't aligning with the crisis Canada is facing. Housing costs, infringement of civil liberties, highest inflation in history, unbalanced immigration policies, taxation to the point of poverty, weakening of our economy by importing natural resources that Canada already has and underutilizes, and based on the past 8 years of this Prime Minister, Canadians do not have confidence in this Prime Minister after 5 ethics investigations and Canada's reputation being tarnished on a global scale under his leadership. To the extent that Canada is being discluded from participating in statements regarding important geopolitical events. We, the undersigned, citizens and residents of Canada, call upon the House of Commons to call for a vote of no confidence and a federal election 45 days following the vote. So,
this is a live petition. It just opened up on November the 24th, and it is available to sign until December the 24th of this year, 2023. And we do have a link to it in the description if you have not already signed it and would like to do so.
Right. And the interesting thing about this petition is that it's been open for how many days, Fox?
It's been open for 3 days, and it already has almost 54,000 signatures. And it probably has more, but once you sign the petition, you then have to verify through your email address, if I'm not mistaken, and then it'll count your signature. So there's probably a whole bunch of people who have signed it who haven't done that verification process, and their votes not counted on the online counter. So
if you're listening to this and you're curious whether or not you've done that, you may not have remembered if you've done that and you've signed the petition, check your email. You know, you should get an email from the House of Commons, and it'll say, you know, please click here to validate or, you know, to show your continued support. And then only when you click that does your vote actually count on that petition. So just something for everybody to know. Now, here's the thing with these petitions. They don't really bind the government to anything. What these petitions really are for are more symbolic. Sometimes they can have an impact because if enough Canadians do sign them, it can really spur their government to do something. Now, what we think is going to happen here, since this petition ends December 24th, which is 9 days after the Parliament adjourns for the holidays, is that this is essentially going to be a prop. You're not allowed to bring props into Parliament, but you're allowed to hold something and read it. So I imagine what's going to happen is when they return following the holiday break, Michelle Ferreri is going to bring this in, and either she or Pierre is going to pull it up and read what we just read, and then is going to wave it in front of Trudeau. But I don't think that that's going to be the real audience for this. I think the real audience for this is going to be the NDP, because I really like that the people who created this petition specified that this was a Liberal NDP government. And if we end up having hundreds of thousands, or please, 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 everyone sign this, millions of Canadians signing this, that's going to really start to make a chill go up the back of the spine of the NDP, because they don't have a lot of support as it is, and they can't afford to lose any more. So I think this is a kick in the rear to get the NDP to really start thinking about that supply and confidence agreement. Now, we've talked about confidence votes in the past. We touched on it in our live stream last night, but we just wanted to clarify for everybody exactly what a confidence vote is and when they can be called. So Fox ended up finding this off of our commons.ca. We'll put the link in the description as always so you can take a look for yourselves. But this goes over confidence votes.
There's an important chapter in here that I'm going to read. It says, what constitutes a question of confidence in the government varies with the circumstances. Confidence is not a matter of parliamentary procedure, nor is it something on which the Speaker can be asked to rule. It is generally acknowledged, however, that confidence motions may be, and it lists 3 things. Number 1, explicitly worded motions which state that the House has or has not confidence in the government. Number 2, motions declared by the government to be questions of confidence. And number 3, implicit motions of confidence, that is, motions traditionally deemed to be questions of confidence, such as motions of granting of supply, although the government may not necessarily lose confidence over an individual item of supply, motions concerning the budgetary policy of the government, and motions respecting the address and reply to the speech from the throne. So what do those 3 things mean exactly?
Good question. So let's start with the point number 3. So what that means is that there are votes that are very typical that happen during parliamentary procedure and during the life cycle of a government. And one of those is the vote on a budget. So implicit, this is what this means, meaning by default, a budget vote is also a confidence vote. There's no getting away from that. The Liberals couldn't remove the confidence portion of that from the vote if they wanted to, because it is tied together. And so it should be, because if you have a government presenting a budget and it's a minority government and all of the opposition parties line up to vote down that budget, that means they don't have confidence in the budget, ergo they don't have confidence in the government. So if a budget vote were to fail, then the government would fall. The Governor General would have to dissolve Parliament, and then a election would have to happen 45 days after. So that's typically what happens there. And it's typically over, as they said, motions for granting of supply. So there's motions of, doing things like to be able to continue the operation of the government. That's what supply typically means. The other one that I'm going to touch on is that first point that Fox mentioned. So what that means is any party, any member of any party can issue a motion of non-confidence pretty much at any time. You don't have to wait for anything. So the question of, well, why haven't the Conservatives put forth a vote of non-confidence before? Well, they don't really need to at this point, and there's a reason why they're not doing it every day. It's because it will just take up frivolous time for other important issues going through Parliament, but also there's no rational reason to have these votes if you know you're not going to win. Because politically, all it looks like is a loss for the party that is bringing it forward if the motion is defeated. So they're only going to bring that forward if they know the NDP and the Bloc are going to be voting with them on it. And at some point they will. Mark my words, at some point they will. But I don't know if the Conservatives are going to be the ones that are bringing the vote forward. I think it's probably going to have to come from the NDP. So this petition here, this is more for a symbolic demonstration for the Conservatives to demonstrate to Parliament that Canadians have had it and they don't want this government anymore. And it's to show Jagmeet You are directly tied to these Liberals, and this is what Canadians think of you. So you better pay attention.
And if you want to save your skin, you better jump ship now.
Right. So, speaking of Jagmeet, there was an article published yesterday on a rumor that the NDP are open to waiving their end-of-year deadline for pharmacare legislation. So if you're not sure what that is, as part of the supply and confidence agreement that the Liberals are enjoying with the NDP, is a condition that the Liberals have to pass a act or a piece of legislation that sets up pharmacare as a single-payer universal pharmacare system, kind of like our healthcare system. So what does this say? We're not going to read the whole article, but they only talk about really waiving it in the beginning. It says the NDP is willing to waive a key deadline contained within its working agreement with the Liberals that states pharmacare legislation must be passed by the end of the year. And it talks about the supply and confidence agreement, when it's supposed to last. So the stipulation is, quote, progress toward a universal national pharmacare program by passing a Canada Pharmacare Act by the end of 2023. Well, folks, they only have, what, 19 days left? There's not a lot of time to do that. And there's nothing on the floor yet. So, as the article says, quote, no such legislation has been tabled in the House of Commons as the end of November approaches, raising questions on Parliament Hill about whether the Liberals remain committed to moving ahead on pharmacare. An NDP source told the Globe and Mail that pharmacare conversations are taking place between its health critic Don Davies and Health Minister Mark Holland, as well as at the staff level. If the process takes longer than the end of the year and the legislation turns out to be better because of that, it will be worth it, the source said.
So what they're saying essentially is, if they have a draft of a bill, but it hasn't passed first, second, third reading, then they will still consider that a win. Because the way that the agreement is worded between the NDP and the Liberals, to my understanding, is that the legislation has to have passed, and that's past third reading, and that means it's going up to the Senate. And they're not going to get that in 14 days. It's 14 sitting days left of this calendar year.
Well, let's go back to the article. Last month, the NDP passed a resolution at its policy convention in Hamilton saying the party would withdraw its support for the supply and confidence agreement if the government does not commit to, quote, a universal, comprehensive, and entirely public pharmacare program, end quote. Following the convention, Mr. Davies said this would be a red line for the party. Mr. Singh said the NDP is using the resolution as leverage. Quote, we've been using that to negotiate something that's going to be good for Canadians, end quote. He said, quote, we're confident we can move forward with it, end quote. The NDP leader also said his party is more interested in making sure that, quote, we do this right, end quote. So here's the thing. The only mention of waiving this is at the beginning of the article, and then some vague references to, well, you know, we want to make sure we do this right.
And allegedly, these claims were made by a anonymous person who's not authorized to speak on it. We're guessing that it's somebody in the lower ranks, maybe a staffer, maybe just somebody who happens to be kind of in the know, but doesn't have the authority to actually talk on these matters. Yeah,
and you know they want to feel like they're bringing a story forward. But here's the problem I see with this. Jagmeet has been saying this whole time, and as he said in this article, as quoted, that he can make the government do what he wants them to do. He's been saying this for months. Now, the government doesn't seem too concerned about passing this. So where's the stick? Like, if the government was really afraid of the big stick that Jagmeet had, then there'd be some evidence of it. There would be, you know, revisions. This would be going to the floor. but it's not. So the problem is if this goes past December 15th, and if Jagmeet doesn't pull the supply and confidence agreement come next year, NDP voters are not going to be happy. Because, to remind everybody, this resolution passed at the convention, yes, but it passed unanimously. Nobody voted against it. That means everyone who showed up to that convention, the dozens and dozens of people, were really passionate about pulling this supply and confidence agreement if they don't get this in.
Well, further to that, though, I don't think this is going to be a possibility, the way the NDP want it to be, because they want a single payer pharmacare system, and all of the insurance companies in this country are not going to let that happen. They are not just going to roll over and be like, okay, you can take all our profits and you guys can deal with pharmacare. You know, we're out of the business. Because believe it or not, insurance companies do make profit from offering pharmacare.
Well, and here's the other thing. So the article states that the Parliamentary Budget Officer estimated the cost of a single-payer drug plan from 2023 to 2028. And they found that this would cost the federal and provincial governments $11.2 billion the first year. But the program would result in $1.4 billion in savings on drug costs in 2024-2025, which would increase. So that savings would increase by $2.2 billion by 2028. Really? You think it's only going to cost $11.2 billion? I don't think so. I really don't think so. And plus, these pharmacies and these insurance companies, you are taking so much money away from them. What do you think is going to happen? This is not going to happen overnight, and they are going to be so angry about this. They're going to do everything in their power not to let this happen. And again, $11.2 billion. Let's say that's right. Who's paying for that?
The taxpayer, of course. Nothing in this country is free. The government does not have money to pay for programs or to give to you. They take it from you first.
Right. So we're running a $40 billion deficit right now. Now add 11. Now you're at $51 billion deficit. More and more and more and more borrowing and more and more and more interest. So this is the thing. Nothing is free. If Jagmeet is playing this game of chicken, this can't be a bluff. Because if it is, the Liberals aren't going to take you seriously, and all of your voters, they're going to be really, really upset with you.
And your party's going to kick you out of caucus.
Yeah, probably. Like
you're going to be ousted as leader, Jagmeet. Like you better keep to that agreement, and you better terminate it once the Liberals fail with their pharmacare plan.
Like the best case scenario for Jagmeet is to use this as justification for his voters to call an election. And he can say, you know, as well as all of the corruption, I can't be partnering with this corrupt party anymore. That's what he should be doing. That's the move. Because the longer he maintains his partnership with Trudeau through these scandals, with everything blowing up, still not even gotten to the public inquiry yet, it is going to drag his numbers down like the Titanic with the Liberals.
And here's how we think the Conservative petition is related to all this. We think that the pharmacare bill will not pass because they have a December 31st deadline.
December 15th.
Well, yeah, really, December 15th, let's be real. So that's not going to happen. And then they don't come back until January 29th. Now, this petition has a deadline of Christmas Eve. That's December 24th. And again, they don't come back until January 29th. So I think very shortly after they come back, probably in early February, either the NDP are going to call a non-confidence vote, or the Conservatives are going to present this petition, and then the NDP are going to say, yes, we agree, let's do a non-confidence.
Could be. Could be. But we'll see. Canadians are asking Santa for an early Christmas present. Let's see if they get it in January.